Hey guys, so in today's video, what I was thinking of showing you was how to make these really delicious chocolate chip cookies that I've made a few times. And I have to say they're really, really good. They come out looking like the kind of big chocolate chip cookies that you would get in a cafe or a restaurant. If you cook them right, as I've made the mistake of not doing a couple times, they do come out to be really chewy and really good. So just be careful of that one. We'll get to that later. But you want to cook them for 15 minutes as opposed to the 17 minutes that I would do sometimes, just to make sure that they come out with a really chewy consistency. Okay, so anyway, this is one of my favorite recipes, I have to say. So they're called the Best Big Fat Chewy Chocolate Chip Cookies. They can be found on a website, which I'll link below. And just to kind of go over the ingredients you'll need, I'll actually show you guys the ingredients, and I'll just kind of read them off to start off with. Okay, so we'll get to that. So to start us off, I'll just go over the ingredients. First, you'll be needing 2 cups of all-purpose flour, which I have here. I'll unwrap that in just a bit. You'll also need a ½ teaspoon of baking soda, which I have right here. You'll also need 1/2 teaspoon of salt, not to be confused with the sugar. I'll also be melting some butter. You'll need a ½ cup of butter or 2½ sticks melted. So why don't we just go ahead and we will unwrap the butter here. Okay. So this is my half of the stick that I've kind of cut up before. And then I'll go ahead and unwrap the other one. So that's all set. And then you're also going to need, which I have back there, 1 cup of packed brown sugar and a ½ cup of granulated white sugar. You'll also be needing 2 eggs. One of the eggs will be the whole egg. The other you'll only be needing the egg yolk. So I'll also go over how to separate the white from the yolk later in the video when we get to that. The last few ingredients you'll need are 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, which I have here. And then you'll also be needing 2 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips, which I also have right there. Okay, so to start us off, I have already preheated my oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. The next step is going to be to grease the cookie sheets. And I have 2 cookie sheets over here on my right. So I'll go ahead and take those out. Just kind of clear a way for them. Okay, so I'm going to be using 2 different cookie sheets here. We'll start off with this one. And this recipe does make about, let's see, I want to say 15 or so really big cookies. The kind of cookie that you would honestly want to split in half and share, probably. Okay. So, let's see what I've done here. I'll just show you guys. Go over and grease this cookie sheet. So first, I'm just gonna unwrap my little greasing brush that I always use. Okay. I'm just using some vegetable shortening here. Some Crisco. Okay. And we're just going to take a little bit of that on the brush, and we'll just spread that in sections around the cookie sheet. And then just kind of proceed to spread that all around. And I like to just have that kind of nicely coated. And I like to get over to the sides as well here, because these cookies do spread. Yeah, so that noise is my oven timer going off for being preheated. Yeah, and I like to just get, once again, right over to the edge with the shortening, because that way when the cookies spread while they're cooking, there's no problem getting them off the pan later. Okay. So, this sheet is all set. Our first cookie sheet's all set, and we'll just go ahead and begin the second one. That's a little bit of a different shape, so I'll go ahead and take my Crisco here, just the vegetable shortening. We'll just kind of dabbing it around, little equal parts around your sheet. This one's a little bit heavier, so I might go a little bit faster just so I'm not holding it for as long. I'm just going to put it down to continue. And when I go to put the cookies on themselves later, I'll just kind of be putting them in equal spacing across the pan. I usually like to do about 6 at one time, maybe 7 at most, because that is how much they'll spread apart. Okay, so So now our second pan is greased. And you can just put that aside. I'll cover up our Crisco again. Excuse me. Okay. And that can be put aside as well, because now we're all done with that step. And then I'll also just cover up my little brush here. And put our brush to the side. Okay, so our next step is to sift together the flour, baking soda, and salt, and then set that aside. So I'll take one of my smaller bowls here, and we can take out our flour now. Okay. We just need two cups total of this flour. So I'm going to do 4 of my half cup measurements, because the half cup fits into the bag easier. Okay. And as you can see, it's just a little bit over. So I'm just going to tap out a little bit of that excess and kind of rub it on the side there. There we go. That's better. Okay. There we go. And I might even just go grab a knife to level off that top with. Okay, so I'm back with my knife. We'll try this out again. Okay, so that's better. And again, I'm just trying to get a nice, even, level measurement. So you can take a butter knife and just slide that across the top and allow that excess flour to just fall back into the bag. Okay, so that's 1 cup. We will continue now. So our flour is all set. I'll just go ahead and put that away. So next we have the baking soda. I'll take that here. for this, I'm going to go ahead and use my spoon measurements. Okay, we need a half teaspoon of baking soda. So that's that one there. And the last ingredient for this step is going to be our salt. And I've labeled my salt different from my sugar so I don't confuse the two. You'll need one more half teaspoon of salt here. Here we go. And we just want to make sure that we mix that together so that everything is combined. I want to make sure that the baking soda and salt are evenly distributed within the flour. Okay, that's probably fine. And we can put that aside. We'll wait to add that into our cookie batter later. Okay, so our next step is to actually melt our butter. What I'm going to do is bring you guys into the kitchen and we'll put this in a different dish. We'll melt it over medium heat so that it just kind of becomes liquidy. And that's another thing I like about this recipe, because sometimes other recipes require you to use softened butter, and most of the time the butter in my house is just frozen in between uses, or we keep it in the fridge. So having to wait a few hours for it to soften can be kind of a drag. So I like this recipe because you can just go from frozen or refrigerated butter or softened butter and just go ahead and melt that. Okay, so let's go into the kitchen. Alright, so we're in the kitchen. I have our bowl warming up over medium heat. I'm just gonna tip this butter into that bowl. And just be sure for this step that you're either using an oven-safe, heat-safe dish or an actual saute pan. I don't think a cast iron pan would really work for this because you want the butter to be kind of a silky smooth texture. Alright, and I'm also just going to be using a knife to soften that up even further. So that's already beginning to melt a little bit along the bottom here of this butter. I kind of like how it's standing up like that, but I am going to have to tip it over. The more surface area you have for this step, the faster it's going to melt. So we're just creating as much surface area here as possible by cutting up the butter into smaller pieces. And as you can see, there's already a bunch of liquid butter at the bottom, even within these few seconds. And then you can kind of just stir that around. Just kind of get it coated and let it melt down. Yeah, and that's already beginning to go for sure. We're about halfway there at this point. When you're melting this on medium heat, just be conscious that you should be standing right near it, because you wouldn't want to walk away for this process and come back to burnt butter. That's not fun to clean off of a pan. If you do feel like you have to walk away, you can leave it on low heat instead. But of course, being sure to come back to it in a timely manner. Okay, so at this point that's already pretty much melted. I'm going to turn off the heat, and the hot butter is going to continue to melt these chunks that are still left over in just a few seconds. So we'll go back in the other room and we'll add that to our bowl. So with this step we're going to have a new bowl. I've gotten a larger one. If you prefer, you could have switched the bowls and used a smaller one for this process, but I like having the second be larger so that you have more room to add in later. And this step just calls for taking our sugar. I'm going to start off with the white sugar here, but it doesn't matter. Either way is fine. And we're just going to uncap this lid. Okay. And then this recipe is calling for 1/2 cup butter here. Excuse me, sugar. Okay. So that looks good. Once that's all set, you can set that aside. We'll move on to our brown sugar. Okay. Now the brown sugar takes up a little bit more room in our cup, so we're going to have to pack it down as we add it in. And I also grabbed a spoon for this part. Okay. So I like to just take little spoonfuls and add that in, 1 spoonful at a time, making sure to pack it down as you're going. Just like that. Add it in and just kind of pack it down against those edges. I love the taste of brown sugar. It's really great for cooking, baking. Another use for it I like is using it actually in a teriyaki sauce. Tastes really good there. But of course, our goal today is not a sauce, but these awesome cookies. Okay. We're almost done here. It kind of takes a minute. Now, even if you had a big enough container that you could scoop this out of, you definitely want to keep packing it down after a scoop to make sure that you get all of it in there that you need. Okay, so that's looking better. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more right on top. Go ahead and put that jar aside. And then this is going to fall into our little pan here a little bit more easily. Hopefully all at once. Yep. And I kind of love how it does that. It just stays in that little cup shape. Okay. So now we're going to pour our melted butter right over that. I like to flip my pan so that the melted butter that's dripping goes back onto it. And you can just proceed to kind of mix that up with a fork. Okay. Now our next step when we're mixing this, it's actually going to require us to use a hand mixer. You could just use a fork if you don't have access to a hand mixer. I'm actually trying that out right now. It doesn't seem to be working too bad. But I do think a hand mixer works best to really cream together this butter and sugar, so I am going to go grab that now. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got my hand mixer, plugged it in, so we're almost ready to go. Just going to add these attachments here. Make sure that they're secure. Sometimes adding the second one doesn't work out as well as you'd like. You kind of have to turn it just a bit before it pops in. Okay. And I swear, if there's ever a time to taste the ingredients along the way when you're cooking this, it's now. Because this butter and sugar mixture just tastes awesome. You can also be using light brown sugar as well. It does not have to be dark. Okay. So I'll go ahead and mix this. Okay, that looks beautiful. That's creamed together really well now. So our next step, we're going to take our eggs and our vanilla. Alright, so I'll show you how to separate these eggs and the whites. What you're going to do is take your egg and something like a butter knife or something to crack it on. And just kind of crack that open. Now you're just going to wait a moment. You'll see those egg whites are beginning to drip out. You're going to hold it by the side of the egg that has more shell on it. Then you're going to break it apart. And those whites are going to start to overflow. Okay. Now the trick here is you're going to scoop underneath the egg yellow and scoop it onto the other side, and more of the egg white's going to fall out. And you're just going to keep doing that until all that's left is that yellow part. Okay. And I also just like to make sure that this extra little white part does not stay attached to the egg, although it doesn't really matter. And as you can see, eggshell is one of the few things that can cut through egg white, so that really helps. Okay, so here we have just our egg yellow, the yolk. Put it into our mix here. Okay. And you can use these egg whites for scrambled eggs, scrambled egg whites. You can save them for another recipe. Even give them to your dog to lick up if you're not going to use them. Use them to compost, whatever you're going to do. I like to not waste them, so one of those uses is usually my go-to option. Okay, I'm just going to go dispose of these shells here. I'll be right back. Okay. Another use for these egg whites could be a facial mask. They're good for minimizing pores, I believe. I'm not quite sure. I used them once in a facial mask and they worked pretty well. But you know, I'm sure you can find a recipe online somewhere. Okay. We're going to add this whole one into our bowl. And we're going to dispose of the shell. We're going to go ahead and add in our vanilla here. We have our pure vanilla extract by McCormick. I recommend this just for the sheer size of the bottle, because sometimes when you get a little vanilla bottle, it just doesn't last as long with the rate that I bake. Okay, and we're going to use a whole tablespoon for this. Okay, that looks good. And at this point, you're going to want to use your mixer again, your hand mixer, to cream together the eggs, the vanilla, and the sugar and butter. Once that step is complete, what we'll do is we'll begin to mix in the rest of the dry ingredients. And we are going to blend those as well. And what you want to do here is just mix them in about a half or a third at one time. You don't want to add it too quickly, because then it doesn't combine as thoroughly. So once that's all set, you will kind of bring the dough back to the center. And then we're going to add in our chocolate chips. Finally. Okay. So I'll add those in now. And I've already gotten out 2 cups of chocolate chips. So it's kind of a lot, but don't be surprised or alarmed. They're going to blend right in. Okay. And then you can thoroughly combine them. I like to use a spatula. Of course, you can use your hands for this. But sometimes when I use my hands, I know it can be kind of challenging to have to wipe off your hands once it's all combined, and then you feel like maybe you're washing away a good amount of the dough. That's how I feel anyway sometimes. And you're just going to keep stirring that and folding it into the middle like this until all the chocolate chips are evenly distributed. Just like that. Make sure they're deep into the bottom and distributed evenly on top. Just like that. So that's looking beautiful so far. And we are almost at this point ready to put them into the oven. But first, we'll go ahead and divide them. So what you'll need to divide them is a 1/4 cup measuring right there. I like to use a knife for this process of putting into the 1/4 cup. So here we are in the kitchen. I have with me my 1/4 cup measurement. And what you're going to do is just kind of use a knife to kind of spoon your mixture into that 1/4 cup. And once again, we're just making sure that it's level and kind of evenly in there. Alright, that looks good. And a 1/4 cup is kind of a big measurement. This is going to make a big cookie. What I like to do to release them onto the pan is just kind of circle the knife around as I'm releasing. So it is going to create a big cookie. And just make sure to place them about 3 to 4 inches apart on your pan. Of course, you can also be using parchment paper instead of a grease pan. But whichever you use, these cookies will spread. Now I highly recommend these cookies for sharing with others, whether you're bringing them to work, to an event, just sharing them with friends or family, whatever the case. I really do recommend that you share them. This recipe creates about 15 or 16 large cookies, the kind you'd probably like to split. Of course, you can also eat them one by one. Or save them for a rainy day. Things like that. They also just have a very beautiful taste and texture, especially when you cook them for the 15 minutes of allotted time. They come out really soft. You might even mistake them for being underbaked, but even if you think they're underbaked, I think you should still take them out. Let them cool for a few minutes, and then tell me how they taste, because they will be amazing. So we're almost done here with our first batch that are about to go into the oven. So we've made up about 12 so far. And as you can see, there's still a bit left in that bowl. So unless you have a big enough oven to fit 3 big cookie sheets, then by all means you can cook them in one batch. But my oven personally might not be big enough for that. We don't have 3 racks, and I don't have enough cookie sheets for that. So at this time, I'll go ahead and put my trays into my preheated oven, and we can get them started. So I've just taken these out of the oven, and this is how they should look. Just like that. And they're just about setting right now. So I'm not sure if you can tell from this camera, but they are a little bit raw on the inside still. But because they're cooling down, that heat that's still inside them from being cooked is going to help to set our cookies. Okay. And now I'm just going to go finish cooking the 3 or 4 remaining ones. But these ones came out really well so far. And as you can see, it doesn't look like too many chocolate chips. To me, it looks like just the right amount. So I really hope you enjoy these. I really hope you like the recipe. And I hope you try them out sometime. Okay, have a great day, and thanks for watching.